Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 12. I listened to Initialise saying transition over now, so I just did. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the podcast. I am one of your three co-hosts, Alex.
Objection, hearsay. Objection, hearsay.
MaskedSwan.
Objection, Your Honor.
On the internet. That is not hearsay. That is a well and true known fact, unless I'm on the Dukes.
But how can we know you've got a mask on? We don't actually know who you are.
Well,
that's like
okay. Well, just follow me on Duke then.
You're not Batman,
Alex over there. It's fine. It's easy, and I am Alex by law. So there we go. The man in the middle that's trying to throw every single legal description at the book at me. Initialise. Sam Hapgood. How are you, mate? How are you?
Yeah, I'll agree with that. That's fine. I'll swear that one under oath.
All right,
yeah,
I'll do your normal one. The man in the middle, as always, Sam. Initialise.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be back. Less happy with the LJL's performance at MSI. But alas, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. The man over on the opposite side, as always, that are immediately brought up here, say, it's Alex Nymaera Hapgood. So hello.
Hey, my attorney has advised me not to say anything on this podcast episode. I will only be denying.
That sounded like a much better podcast episode already.
Yeah. You wait. It's gonna get so vague and waffly.
Say otherwise
it's gonna be like our first episode. Look back to that, like 3 hours long. Nothing of it was all over the place, and yet it's still our most viewed piece of content.
Unless we include Twitter videos, and then we destroy that in the view department.
That's okay.
There's that one Twitter video.
We've actually
going mad. Being very happy.
Great stuff. Yeah.
Very good. Hello, everybody. Also over in Twitch chat land. If you have any questions or queries, make sure to ask them in Twitch chat. We will try and do our best to absolutely try and remember them, copy paste them into a notepad, and then we'll try and answer them later. As always, though, if you're watching the VOD of this, you can do what Samuel Initialise Hapgood? What am I expecting people to do? They're on YouTube.
You need to sacrifice a goat, get the blood, and draw out your dream LJL roster. And then in a mirror, say the name Arya backwards. That's
Praise be Arya, Lord of Mid Lane.
Yeah, that's the one. See, that's the kind of voice you need to go for as well. And you'll summon Victory at Worlds for us, though. Probably don't do that. It's a messy thing, and just don't. But anyway, aside from that, you then probably do it on your computer screen monitor. That feels probably more appropriate for gamers, not mirrors. But then you need to like, comment, subscribe, and probably clean up the mess from your goat sacrifice.
Yeah, we don't disclose or condone anybody actually sacrificing goats.
That's actually very true. Yeah, this was more for the meme than for you to go out and cause abject animal cruelty for no good purpose.
No, though
that would be bad.
Yeah, it would be. Though we would appreciate the like, comment, subscribe, and the bell.
Subscribe. And a 5-star rating on the podcast on your like.
Well, no. It's Nymaera.
Hello.
People are on Spotify or on iTunes, or they're just listening to our audio version or video. If you are on Spotify, we have our video. What can they do for us?
Well, what they can do first is they can fall for a very obvious clickbait, because this is it. This is going to be our last podcast episode, because the LJL's over. It's done. It's done. It's gone.
It's over.
There is no hope for us anymore. So you can fall for that. You can come give us your pity watches, because this is the last podcast episode. And then come back for the next one, when we have a comeback episode, because it won't actually be our last episode. And while all that's happening, you can probably rate it as like, maybe even nominate it for like an Emmy or a Grammy or whatever it is falls under with that. But give us a good rating on various, give us a good rate on whatever rating system things have. It does actually mean quite a lot to us, anything which helps the algorithm, because, we're out here doing free content for y'all on more niche scenes across the League of Legends scene. And that's quite valuable, because it helps educate people on topics which would otherwise not see the light of day. We're doing you a service, and we enjoy doing it, but we'd like you to spread the word to other people too, because it helps us.
Indeed.
We would. It would greatly. And also, each of our Twitter handles are below us, at MaskedSwan, myself, at Initialise, with a 1! One day he'll get that L.
I will, one day.
Not in that way, though. I
get that every day. My solo queue record isn't anything to look at.
Okay, well, you've already got the L then. So it's fine. It's fine. Or you can find the LJL OU at LJL unofficial. Gentlemen, we've done the shilling. We actually did that pretty cleanly. I'm impressed with us. Well done.
Well, I mean, the blood from the goat is not very clean. That was
Yeah, but sacrifices have to be made, literally.
Yeah, they have to be made,
Yes.
quite literally.
Quite literally.
And I, like to clarify as well, I don't want people chasing after like Faker or Simple or something with a knife. I don't mean that kind of goat. So don't go like doing that. That would be wildly inappropriate and probably get you arrested. And then I would get arrested for having suggested it.
Yeah.
So you know,
Yeah.
this is not
Crazy
things
how
I
that
agree with.
I mean, one of the Halo goats is leaving Halo and going back to Apex. It's a wild ride going
Wow,
down.
yeah.
Sniper down,
That's
leaving.
because-
I'm on a tangent already, gentlemen.
Yeah,
this
we've done well.
today's podcast. I'm going to get us at least on the podcast of LJL topics and MSI. I'm not going to start going in tangent about Halo players. That would be an awful time. But great side podcast maybe. We're going to talk about DFM's performance at MSI, obviously, for those people out there. We're going to talk about various MSI issues. There have been countless. If you've watched anyone that farms League of Legends drama for content, League in general for compression. And we're going to probably spend most of this episode talking about the format, because the three of us have some pretty strong opinions about the format compared to well, actually every pundit does have strong opinions, quite frankly, actually, about it. So we have ours and we're going to give them to you, and if we have time we will hopefully try and get on to some LJL drama or recent happenings. Yeah, I think, gentlemen, we should just jump straight into this. Normally we would have done like a halfway check-in episode normally with DFM halfway through their group, and we would have gone, oh well, this has been good, this has been bad. We've got all the games in front of us. They ended up going, what was it, 1-6? No, 1-5.
1-5,
right?
1-5, yeah.
And I mean, I was just disappointed. I think that's the only word that really sums up my ultimate view, because I really felt like at minimum we should have got 2-0. We should have been 2-0 versus Team A's. We didn't even do that. Saigon Buffaloes, they deserve their spot, as do T1, obviously. But this was just super disappointing for me. Who wants to kind of pick up the slack from me first?
Let me start, because I suspect Alex will have some
many
more
thoughts.
Nuances. Exactly. I mean, we all do. I think there are some things which I think we should go away really happy with, and some things we should be very, very frustrated with. Because actually, we pulled a bit of a T1 in the Rumble stage, in the sense that we had actually pretty consistently really good early games. Way better than I was expecting. Actually, we did a lot of win lane, win game. Well, not the win game, but we did a lot of the win lane part of that equation. Way better than I expected against quite a lot of people. Hell, even against T1, right? Like, obviously, we now see that Goomer and Kerio have had an unfortunately mixed tournament, particularly considering their pre-tournament expectations. But, you know, there was like Udipon's Ezreal game against those guys was pretty damn sick at points. And actually, it was really good to see the likes of Steel, Ebby, Harp, Udipon, all actually getting things done pretty well early on, getting significant leads. We were up 4,000 or 5,000 gold pretty consistently in the mid game. But then there were some pretty consistent mid-game throughs by taking team fights we really shouldn't have been doing compared to our comps. It was something we saw a little bit of in the LJL. It's something we've seen a little bit of with T1, but they've done it around the Baron more particularly. But it really came back to bit us, and it lost us arguably 2 games against Saigon Buffalo. It lost us a game against A's. And that is really, really frustrating when you've got, 4 out of 4 good early games into 1 out of 4 conversion. That's not good enough. And they're going to go home incredibly frustrated, I'm sure.
So I think for like my overall opinion, have to think about you have to compare that to the pre-tournament expectations. So I'm going to go refer to the document that we did, where so just kind of quote for quote overall. So what we said pre-tournament was overall DFM are a flexible, high-level team with top-level practice with a recent, relevant international experience buoying them. They have many factors going for them and many continuing storylines which give them a lot of hope. We expect them to be tangling with Pool 2 teams and have a strong opportunity to make the Rumble stage. Now, I think actually based off of that. This is still actually within expectations of, if you look just at the games which happened with Saigon Buffalo, they had the 2 closest games of the group stage were DFM versus Saigon Buffalo. I don't think anyone's going to walk.
I'll be honest. I think the whole of MSI group stage, full stop, the 2 closest games was DFM Saigon Buffalo.
Yeah, I would say that the whole.
Yeah,
Well, that's what I'm saying. The whole.
Oh,
group
you meant the
stage.
whole of it, not just Group A.
The whole
You
group,
meant
the whole group stage. I think actually
Agreed.
they're closer than like maybe even like 2 matches from the Rumble stage, which is now completed today as well. So I think that on the kind of the benchmark of we think DFM are up there with a Pool 2 team. I think that has proven itself. I think that is more than fair. I think seeing how Saigon Buffalo then acted in the Rumble stage as well, playing Blue Shell, coming out with a handful of wins. I actually think on that metric, DFM are not too displeased with themselves. I think the thing which I'm a little disappointed in is just the mental boom for the last game with Team A's. I think I think that there are a couple of things in terms of the overall performance which have maybe a little bit worried for DFM. Because Sam's absolutely right. I think that the early game was pretty solid, actually. I think that DFM showed a better idea of once the wheels come off in the early game, what do? I think the first game we have versus Team A's is a pretty good example of that, where actually first level 1 invade doesn't go well. They're playing with accidental lock-in of our Ornn, like on the last pick. We kind of find a way through it. So that's something which DFM used to struggle with. Once plan A goes wrong, what do you do in the early game? You look at some of the games in World's Group Stage last year. C9 was a good example of this when we faced them throughout the year as well. If things didn't go well in the early game, we didn't really tend to recover. What we've traded that for is not having that same ability to do that in the mid game. Now, what used to happen with DFM, when you had Aria and Gang, they were less solid in the early game in terms of rolling with the punches of early game plans. Gang was not always on it in laning phase. I think that Harp has very much been more on that side. Yaharong also typically more solid in lane compared to Aria, who now we've seen over in the LCK really struggling on that front. Yeah, and I think at Worlds last year also had some troubles in that area. Part of that is mid-jungle synergy. Don't get me wrong. It's not just an individual thing. But what they did bring over Harp and Yaharong was clutch playmaking in mid-game. We don't necessarily have that anymore. And what I think that led to was almost an overburdening of Steel to make all of the big plays.
He was trying so hard.
So I know that. So partway through the groups, through the games, I was often saying, Steel bungled this. Oh, I think Steel could have played this better. He was still the person making the plays, and when the plays went well, it was still mainly due to Steel, actually. I just think he shouldn't have been the only person making those plays, and it ended up most of the time falling on him to kind of drag DFM out of mid-game slumps or fall into this like monotony. It's like, we need to keep making plays. Steel's the one doing that. I feel like last year's DFM was better at spreading that role across multiple clutch players. I think we've traded a bit of that flair for more solidity. And in this tournament, we needed a little bit more oomph in the key moments, which we kind of lacked.
Well, you can almost see it as well as it's emphasized even far more in the actual regular season for the LJL, where Ebby was also picking up some of that slack, quite frankly, where he didn't have the luxury because the caliber of top laners at MSI are a lot fucking better than the caliber that he plays. And he did this in that Sengoku final. He was one of the playmakers in that along with Steel. And I just don't think that was another avenue. Steel was miracle, quite frankly.
He's did a really good job.
So like, I think he's a tier 1, he's a pool 1 player.
He did a fantastic. I think also now looking back, Hazmed and Zeus have been 2 of the better top players at the tournament. Actually, ironically. But I say, Bin has been Bin. If you ever get the chance to talk to orcs about Bin, do it, because it will be one of the most entertaining conversations you ever have. Orcs simultaneously loves and furiously despises Bin in equal measure. I don't think I've known a player ever frustrate an analyst as much as Bin does orcs.
Hang on, Sam. Hang on, Yuhi.
Fuck.
That's just. Wait. I don't think we have the same amount of love for him though.
Okay, that's fair.
That's we just have some. Well, and orcs. I suspect he will go bald if he has to watch too many Bin games. I think there is a genuine threat of that happening where he tears out a lot of his hair. That tangent goes to side to say, look, Hazmed and Zeus have been consistently, particularly Zeus, consistently pretty goddamn excellent. And considering like T1's woes and inconsistencies in the mid game, I don't think that's true of Zeus. Owner as well to a lesser extent, but like that kind of hurt Ebby a little bit, where he wasn't bad. Like Ebby really didn't play badly, but he was a bit sort of he felt like a bit more of a role player. He was good. He wasn't Ebby, which is not what I want to see out of the guy that was demolishing
the
Khan at MSI
driving
last year.
force of DFM in the LJL. I think that's the big difference between this year and particularly MSI last year as well. DFM was the real engine of DFM. I actually think that was Utapon in a lot of ways this time. It was Utapon and Steel. I think at World Steel was kind of and these are like, I don't know. I probably need to clarify some stuff on Steel again because like I do think there are some points where he just like visibly just like completely fucked the play. But he was also the person making the plays.
Well, sometimes
whereas
that's what happens, right? Sometimes the difference between being perfect and making the biggest mistake is the same coin, right?
And sometimes but especially when you are kind of the sole point of pressure or playmaking, or it sometimes feels like that. The line between a hero play and an int gets remarkably narrow, especially when a lot of things fall into you.
You're playing something like remember
that one's but like, especially when you're playing something like Wukong and you've got 12 kills.
Yep.
Sometimes like you just have, and especially sometimes you just have to be the guy going for it, and like it's nice to have someone else backing you up, right? And when that doesn't work, it gets a bit frustrating. I think I'll also add that I feel Yaharong wasn't as self-sufficient as we were hoping for.
Well, I think we should talk about Yaharong and Harp as kind of a package as the rookies to the international stage for DFM.
That's fair. You start that conversation up, and we'll talk about it.
Because let's be real. One thing that the three of us were a little concerned about, because guess what? Yeah. We saw it with D3. So we knew exactly what we could be in store with, sadly. We hoped it would be different because there was Utapon, there was Ebby, there's Steel. These guys have already shown up. Yaharong and Harp had pretty high expectations placed upon them, partly because of who they replaced with Arya and previously Seros. And Seros has those special play moments that get played every Hypeville video with that Karma play to double kill, remember? Like that is immortal. That is actually immortal.
It's a great play. Yeah,
that's good.
It is. It's maybe one of the best Japanese international plays. It's up there with the solo kill on Faker from Arya at level 3. Like it's that kind of crazy thing. You summed it up perfectly, I think, though, Sam. Yaharong, we needed you to be a bit more self-sufficient if Steel is going to have to be doing everything else that he was doing. And I'll be honest, Harp was not the playmaker I needed him to be comparing him directly to his predecessor of Gang.
Yeah.
Which is where I'm going to be making the comparison, sadly.
There was the Renata game versus A's where I think he did that awesomely.
That was game 1, yeah.
That was the game that we won, actually.
Yes. He was sicko mode on that.
Yeah, I think that he had some more rough games outside of that. I actually think for someone that came in was obviously quite nervy, I think that Harp, I'm going to put less pressure on them. I think they ended up doing pretty okay. But you're right. I think that Gang was much more lethal,
a bit more
outside of lane. A bit more veteran. And again, like if there was one thing that Gang brought to the table, it was being able to make the magical weird plays.
Like so many times.
Actually, there's actually a lot of similarities between someone like him and Kaiwing. And Kaiwing, I think, is an absolute minor region superstar. In fact, I was VOD reviewing some of PSG's games today, and Kaiwing, I think, continues to be really, really good. Not just in lane, but
he's gonna get imported at some point to somewhere. Like if there's a real, like the LPL might steal him. I suspect
it would be a huge loss to PCS. But like, so I think it'd be good to like start recapping some overall thoughts into like some more like bullet pointy things. So I think for me, I think it was a lack of playmaking. I think there's a lot of subheadings to that, but I think it was basically left with Harp in game 1. Most of the rest of the time, it was Steel, Utapon depending on draft. I think we had big missing pings on Yaharong just the entire tournament. He was very quiet. There was the first game versus Saigon Buffalo on TF, which was pretty okay. The rest of it was not great. And the big missing ping for me was, of course, Ebby. Ebby didn't get his individual lane matchups. I don't think he drafted good matchups for himself. I don't think the team did that. I think there were some points against him in that regard. But either way, if you're picking to lose lane, you have to pick it for a reason elsewhere. And they didn't find a way to make that work. And that was a little bit disappointing for DFM. Like I said, I do think they made it close versus Saigon Buffalo in both games. I think that's great to see. The T1 games, I don't think the drafts helped. I think they were bluntly outclassed across laning phase.
They had one
BA's
game where it didn't go awfully in the early phase, didn't
Yeah,
they?
like there was the game where Udapon's Ezreal was like trying real
That was the first
hard,
game,
and that was
first
some,
game.
and then Steel had some.
But even
kills
then,
early.
they
Like,
made
there
some
were
really rookie
moments,
errors
but
in the 2v2. So
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm not.
yeah, they're getting
trying
caught by the pie cook is not what you need to see.
Yeah, this was
not
not
a
like
level 3.
DFM versus Damwon last MSI, where we were like, oh my god, they might actually beat them. This is more like, well, they got through laning
At least
phase.
you can go
and
down
now...
without throwing a few punches.
it was more like the EDG game at Worlds last year, where we had an okay early game, and then just like suddenly like 10 minutes passes, game's over.
Yeah. Yep.
So
No, I think that's perfect.
I think that's a fairly overarching thing on DFM's performance at MSI. I was hoping that playmaking was going to be more present because actually they had an overabundance of playmaking within their region. I'm a little worried for that because now I'm thinking, well, if the solidity isn't actually solid enough for international and you don't have that spark anymore, where's this ending up? Where's this ending up? Is this just going to be the pool 1 teams are too hard? Actually, they were tangling with pool 2 teams, but actually, where does that draw a comparison to? Does that draw a comparison to get into World's Plans and you're with VCS2 again, who are Team Secret or Saigon Buffalo? What if there's an NA team in there and actually, you know, we struggle versus Cloud9 as much as we succeeded?
Or Team Liquid,
Exactly.
Cloud9,
Yeah. You know, so I'm starting to look at that and I'm looking at Worlds and I'm like, there needs to be a large amount of development towards that critical playmaking from DFM or whoever is sent from the LJL. Let's be honest at this point, that is a very open question for us to start regaining some of the confidence. Yeah. And I think there are some...
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Like, the world doesn't know that.
Okay.
But I'd agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, like, I still think it's pretty heavily likely to be DFM, but it's like it's not a dead set, I think is the way I'd put it. Like, there are actually other good teams. I just think DFM are pretty clearly the best.
Well,
and
not I think these two rookies. I don't know.
I think I don't. I
am so worried about. So I don't doubt their
it.
hands. Actually, I don't doubt Harp or Yaharong's hands. You know what I doubt? And I really fucking doubt because it got brought up in multiple interviews across different sources.
This is the mental
fucking mental game.
Yeah.
I do not know what's wrong with them, but I'm sorry, you can't be a professional for now 2+ years. Both of them have played professionally for 2+ years. I'm sorry, you need to have ways in which you can get yourself in the game at this moment in time. If you are tilting off the face of the earth, fine. Do whatever you need to do to reset yourself. You've got literal days between them, except for that last day where you play all 3 games in a row. And I actually think that's my favorite day, honestly.
Yeah, but I'm like, gonna I think, so to double down on that, because this is something which I think, so Hina picked up on this, and actually I noticed it once it was mentioned. This a really good litmus test for how the DFM camp is feeling is how Ebby is doing his content. Did day 1 vlogs after that?
Didn't think about that.
Nothing. So I think when you listen to the interviews and saying Ebby said this MSI was not a good memory. This was not an enjoyable experience. Effectively, we want to do better next time. And Steel going like, oh well, we'll go get him next time. Effectively, I think it says something about the camp at that time. I really hope that's not something systematic. I hope that's just an on the event thing. We know there are a lot of things which happen over MSI. We're probably going to get into talking to them next. Actually, maybe we should segue from this, but let's finish off this point. Because
yeah, I mean, like,
I do think that DFM, it's fairly obvious to us in our experience that it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows with DFM as we compare it to previous international events like last year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't want to go full disaster mode off.
No, but it's worth just noting it. Worth noting it.
And exactly, it's worth putting a pin in.
Danger,
actually,
danger! The world
for all that we're saying that the playmaking is, for all that we're right. For all that we're saying, like that we had some issues with the mid game decision making. I suppose. I mean, I think the playmaking stuff. I think I'll put more towards like decision, because sometimes it's just like, screw what our comp. We're gonna go and just team fight in them because why not? But I'll say, as my ping dies a little bit, so I'm hoping this is still audible. But yeah, I kind of need to see that this actually ends up in some growth, and we actually see some of the flaws that were exposed getting fixed. Because the early game was actually pretty good. I thought Harp had some good plays in the early game. We saw Steel, Udapon, even Ebby playing pretty fine in the early game, some good plays to get things rolling. But it was those kind of mid-game decision-making things when things stalled that things fell apart a bit. And yes, there were some tough teams in that group, and it was arguably the toughest group. But you want to tangle with these guys, you've got to be able to play to their level. And mental's a part of that. Mid-game decision-making is a part of that.
So
I think they'll be at Worlds. I expect them to improve on stuff, but we do actually need to see something.
I think based off of Spring and actually the way that I thought that finals was actually a bit of a blip, I would have said pre-tournament and how I saw these teams, I would have felt like in terms of a percentage, DFM making Worlds on the current trajectory would have been like 80, 90%. High chance. I actually have to take a fair amount percentage off that. I think they're still likely. I think there's now actually a sizable dark horse chance that Rascal Dancer or Sengoku can make it over them, though.
And I love that because I completely agree with you, Alex.
I disagree.
I think no. So Sam, I think.
Do you think it's more the same likelihood that DFM makes Worlds after seeing this MSI? Seriously,
I think
this hasn't changed your opinion of them at all.
Yeah, by far.
See. I was going to double. I'm double downing with you, Alex, because I actually think Sengoku and Rascal Jester are going to watch this tape on DFM and go, "All right, that's how we exploit them. That's how we do it. All right, cool.
Yeah,
figure it out." In a sense,
I don't think they're capable.
Well, we'll find out. Well, the message.
Well, I think we saw. I think we saw. With Sengoku almost were in the finals actually, and I think that Sengoku are a more constrained team. I actually think the meta shift towards like more durable teams massively favors someone like Honey, who loves to play those elongated team fights and loves to play those 5v5s. I think that's going to start favoring them.
Get my hopium going, man. Don't do that.
So put it this way. I think that DFM are likely to make Worlds. I'm not going to put it at like 85, 90% anymore. I'm going to dip that down to like 75%, maybe a little less, maybe 70%. I think that between Sengoku and Rascal Jester, I think that DFM have shown a couple of cracks in the foundations. I think we saw how close it was in playoffs. They're still likely to make it. Let's see how they bounce back from this, because if this is now something which, as Lexi was saying, in terms of like the tape actually might show some underlying flaws, they will need to bounce back. So yeah, we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I think that's overcorrecting towards results-based stuff. I think DFM will be just fine. I still think it was like 85%.
So no change from you. No change from you.
No.
You think that this MSI hasn't changed anything for you? Nothing.
We have done this. So we have done that. We've done this so many times before.
Yeah, we have.
And I just think that like basically the equivalent of doom scrolling and overcorrecting and results-based and analyzing. There we go. That's the word. This is running strong right now, and I disagree massively.
So I mean, I agree in a certain sense,
and I just don't think that. I just don't think that the teams
I
have
would
the
like
capabilities
to end
pushing
us
beyond that.
on talking DFM's MSI performance on a man who we love dearly. We actually do love this man. It is Udapon. We haven't spoken about him yet. And
Not
he
much,
kind of weirdly got forgotten about. He didn't really get a lot of persistence. His mate in the bot lane wasn't playing the greatest game in the world outside of his first game.
I actually thought Udapon was really good this tournament.
No, but I actually think, I agree with you that I think he carried his weight as best as he damn could outside of having a crazy pop-off moment, which just never came. More than
he had some
anything
Aphelios
else.
moments, right? Saigon Buffalo, like there were a couple of Aphelios like I remember some like kill combos with
yeah,
there were some fun bits, and obviously the Ezreal versus T1 was pretty okay. I think there wasn't enough he could do. He was fine. I think he was good. It's actually one of the better international performances Udapon's had.
I would agree. What about you, Sam?
I think he was great. I think he did a really good job. I think he did himself proud. I think he will be. I think the one game he's going to be seriously irritated about will be the Samira game, where he was doing just fine and then had to cede like 3 waves in first turret because of like over-indexing towards topside from DFM. And I think they never really managed to find a way to get back into the game.
Did they ever play a game that actually focused more on Utah?
The Aphelios game.
It was the Aphelios game.
Yeah.
Second Saigon Buffalo game.
Yeah. I'm sure that will be frustrating.
Oh, and the Lucian game as well.
It was Lucian game. First game.
And
the Lucian game. Yeah, and the Lucian game. Exactly. So that was kind of what. So I think the flexibility is there. I think it's cool to see him actually pull out things like the Lucian
was good too.
and the Samira and look like he knows, like he has the hands for it at least.
He's always had the hands.
Well, maybe not last group stage.
So, well, but so all of that's good news. I expect that to continue. Hopefully, actually, I'll be interested to see where ADC metas go, because there's been obviously like MSI's changed that quite a lot. I wonder where things will be post the durability updates, and things like Vayne have been rumored because obviously a lot more HP, a lot more long running fights. Silverbolt suddenly become a lot more viable. What do we see with that kind of thing?
Swainbot is going to be absolutely...
And Udapon plays a lot of
rework.
stuff, right? Because he's played a lot of other roles. So there's some fun stuff.
Oh no! We've actually got the perfect player for this meta. Then we actually have the best player in the world having to do this. The man who
I mean, the name is Viper and he's on EDG.
No.
Do you remember his Vladimir?
Okay,
He's goddamn
it's
sick.
good, yeah. Hang on. Tell us then, Lexi.
Well, it's because Udapon, halfway through the split, he had to play 2 games top. What's that about? Who else did that? I didn't see Danny doing that for EG when Papa Impact
Season
had
8.
Yeah, but that was a weird fucking season because no one played their role technically.
True.
In
Faker
pro
played
play.
Darius bot. That was...
Yeah, if Baker's doing
that was a time.
We just asterisk that whole
forgot
season.
about that.
Similar to this MSI, we're going to be putting an asterisk there. But we'll talk about that right now, ladies and gentlemen, because I think it's about time to discuss some of the problems with MSI this season, or just in general. So, if you've been literally living under a rock and for some reason this is the only podcast that you're getting any information about League of Legends, thanks.
Good
Cheers.
choice. Yeah, great choice.
Yeah. It's a choice, but it's a great one. As everybody knows, RNG are playing remotely, so there was the forced ping issue of 35 ping, which turned out for the longest time that actually it wasn't equal for pretty much any of it, and it turned out that only
the first 3 days,
only RNG were actually playing with it, and we still don't really know what happens with the other groups, because none of the other games outside of the RNG games were actually investigated and looked into, which means everybody that was playing over in Korea, we don't actually know what ping they were actually playing on. The players actually don't know that still.
It was, so from what I believe the investigation turned up that it was closer to 55 ping.
What the fuck is that?
Yeah, so basically what happened was, so from what I have heard and what was said on, I believe it was the Summoning Insight episode before last, so not the one that's currently airing, or the one before that. It was effectively, there were a handful of issues, and it was effectively the RNG were playing on the 35 ping. There was a bug which showed the wrong ping on screen after this, so that's not, that was still the correct ping, but in the first 3 days, the ping was more like 55 for those in Korea. So the reason why the B games were replayed is because it was a discrepancy, right? It was a discrepancy. Whereas in the other ones, it was like, at least they're at the same. And I think replaying the entire first 3 days would be, you can't do that within the schedule. You couldn't do that in the schedule. The reason they could do that on the 1 day is because effectively there weren't tiebreakers. So they had time allocated for the tiebreakers, and they didn't meet that full time, so they had the enough in hand.
Assuming RNG don't lose.
Assuming there weren't other tiebreakers. So like there was a high likelihood they would have the time for it. I think they actually made the right decision. I think that in terms of competitive integrity, you have to replay the discrepancy games. It sucks for RNG, don't get me wrong, but like I think they made the right decision with that. What was actually arguably the more important thing was actually, so at the same time there were issues on stage, there were some issues off stage as well, where the practice scrim servers were also not able to replicate the 35 ping.
Yep.
So they couldn't get the tournament circumstances onto practice servers. You either had to play on scrim 0 ping effectively, or on
live.
That's basically what you had. That's basically what you had.
Which is 6 ping in Korea, so it's
so that's
nothing.
but it's basically
it's also
not
the wrong
tournament
patch.
circumstances, right? Yeah, so it's not the tournament circumstances. So when they've worked things out on stage, it also got fixed off stage. So that was fine. So basically after day 3, everything was fine. But before that and in the run up in terms of the prep, that wasn't the same as what they experienced.
Yeah, scrimming.
So I wonder if that affected some people's prep. But
I'd be guaranteed did. Absolutely guaranteed did.
Based on what some people have been saying, I believe that to be the case.
Yeah. So I mean, like obviously, all of that plus the slight awkwardness between remote and live and the audience sound being mispiped again and other stuff.
That's happened on a couple of live events before, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is, I mean, like I remember there was a lot of vitriol thrown the way of the LPL crowd when that was actually also an issue there, right? And like that is, it's definitely not helped the viewer numbers. I think something like the MSI numbers have dropped by about 37%, was if I'm remembering correctly. I might be exaggerating that, but it's a massive drop in overall viewership. I mean, yes, there was the CSGO major happening at the same time, which was obviously a very exciting one.
Which broke records and is the second most.
Oh yeah, for the finals
they've ever done, or
pretty
something.
spectacular. Yeah. But I think the contrast hurt. Plus, obviously, you're missing quite a lot of familiar and important faces on the casting team, alongside like all the issues we've talked about already. It's been an unfortunate mess, I think.
Yeah, and I think when those issues start to pile up, it affects just the whole atmosphere. And I think that that bleeds through to a lot of people's reception of it. I also think that, and we'll get on to talking about format stuff in a bit as well, because that's actually something which I have a lot of thoughts on. I think we low rolled with the format. We had effectively the two best minor region teams in terms of VCS and LJL in the same group. I guess the team they had like zero hope against in T1, especially at the start of the tournament and how they performed in group stage. Like, so effectively what you had is half the matches in that group, which is T1, versus the two teams that maybe in another group could have done something. We'll see, right? I think the Pool 1 teams this year were ridiculously strong comparative to the rest of the teams. But you look at the Pool 1 teams, like compared to like the Pool 2 teams in groups, and like, holy shit, they were not close. And particularly when you have like the two best chances of upsets and creating those big viewership numbers in the same group, like, it doesn't actually lead to the best overall competitive scenario. So I think we low rolled on that. Part of that is seeding. Part of that is just stuff in general. We were missing the LCL again in terms of like we were missing another team. So yeah, it gets a bit rough in terms of the role. And I think all of this is added on top of each other, just really takes away from what should be an incredibly prestigious and exciting event.
Yeah, and honestly, all these issues, and I mean, half of the internet are only talking about the negative parts as well, which obviously, if you're a casual fan and all you see on the internet is everyone going, it's kind of shit. Weird.
The hive mind takes over, right?
Yeah. People just go, oh, well, I guess I'll watch Worlds then. I won't worry then. I watched
the PGL Major, which was great.
Yeah, which was great. Absolutely.
Really good, actually.
So it is that kind of thing. And I just think there's a lot of compounding factors that hit this MSI, which ultimately has led it to be the tournament that's probably going to have the biggest asterisk because of so many issues.
Since Season 2 Worlds, probably. Or the IEMs. The IEMs were probably
I seriously think like Season 2 Worlds, because I was like, every other pundit is like, oh, I'm not really sure. And I'm like, the last time we remade matches was Season 2 Worlds, which goes down as a shit show.
There were remakes because of tech issues before. Season 5 had that because Season 5 quarterfinals... Yeah, World. Season 5 World, Sam and I were in the arena for Fnatic EDG when there was a Gragas bug, which meant that Gragas couldn't detonate his power. And Gragas was a huge pick at that point. The best jungler on the patch, and they disabled him from quarterfinals onwards, and they had to remake a game for Fnatic EDG when no one pick Gragas anymore.
A lot of people have forgotten about that.
Now that seriously impacted someone like Score on KT at that time because he was a huge Gragas player. So there was stuff like that. I think that the IEMs, when you had teams just opting not to play because they didn't care about the tournament, that was also a bit of a meh one. But we haven't really had a lot of open circuit tournaments to have that anymore. So
no, and
happens,
this is actually the first tournament, to my understanding, that has been such a technical colossal fuck up since Riot developed their whole separate server-based system where they have computers in boxes and they just wheel them everywhere because they were remote, because they had to enforce this ping issue and everything. And honestly, it seems like it led to a lot of stuff. But we all understand they were caught in a rock and a hard place. They were damned if they didn't have the LPL there, and they were damned if they did have it because of how this has all gone down. So it's
exactly. And then you add in casters who are not there for one reason or another. You add in the fact that all of it's done remotely from the LEC studio, and it's obviously from the LEC studio.
I'm super confused by that move.
Well, it's cheaper, is what it is.
Oh, sure,
a lot of the time.
really,
and
cheapening the production,
and then on top of that, actually the production team that are doing it in Korea are the ones that do a dual language stream all the time anyway, because they do the LCK, which is English and Korean from the same stadium at the same time, with interactions between the two streams even. And it's like, I find it incredibly disappointing, and I know why it's done. It's just a choice I find.
I think effectively what it boils
partly
down
me
to,
as a caster being a little jealous.
What it boils down to is that taking equipment on the road is incredibly expensive. We're talking
they're doing it for Worlds.
We're talking like millions. Well, that's because they already have it in NA, right? It's kind of already there.
Well, it's also because
they have it in Korea.
Do it in the stadiums. Well, yeah, they do. But part of it as well is just like the language that's being broadcast in the arena will be Korean, right? That's the casting that will be done.
Yeah.
So I mean, okay, so like,
English,
the reason why it is being done is because you are lessening your capabilities on the road in terms of like what you can do for analyst desk, what you can do graphically, what you can do in terms of the scenes you have available for you for an analyst desk or for content and blah blah blah. I think what you lose in that capability, you gain from having casters in the right time zone, having them with the crowd energy, even if you're not actually the language at the being broadcast at the stadium. I think you still gain from the energy. I think that being closer to the players is also just generally pretty good for broadcasting stuff. That's my opinion. I think that a lot of people share that. I hope that we get a couple more roadshow things again. And because Worlds in NA, hopefully we'll get to see the bonuses of having Worlds in a Western region for the English broadcast at least. I don't know what that means for other language broadcasts for their own stuff. I don't know whether what their answer will be if they do that. I don't know if we'll have Korean broadcasts or Chinese broadcasts or whatever being shipped out to us. But yeah, I think for me, I would love to see casters on site again. I think that's a big thing. I think that being part of that energy is almost irreplaceable. But I do know that we even before COVID, it was starting to move that way. I think actually 2018, it was only the finals of Worlds, which was actually on site in Korea. Everything else was remote. And then for the finals, they brought in the casters over to that point. So it was already starting to move in that direction. I don't, like I said, I think we lose a lot for it. So.
I hate it.
Yeah, and I think it does negatively impact the show. And again, this is me very much as a caster, not as a Riot business production person. So
even from an entertainment,
but from my perspective, I think you lose a lot. You go look at that PGL major, the whole thing through. They were at the one stadium. They had an incredible turnout. They had the analyst desk there that looked fantastic, and they still had a lot of tools to do stuff there. So they shipped out, they cashed out to get that. And then you also had like Machine and Sponge with the whole crowd yelling along beside them and interacting with them. That was absolutely extraordinary. And then you could still have a lot of the camera shots that would like duel up with the casters. That disconnect is really obvious in the camera work because of the remoteness of it. It's also when you're panning from like casters to the screens behind the empty computer desks to then go to it still feels like the teams are remote. That's what is coming across from the MSI. It still feels like the teams are remote because of the casting setup.
I'm glad obviously Korean fans got to go and see it obviously live and see those players and everything. And the players clearly, like Caps clearly has evolved, or at least was evolving. We'll talk later about
G2 were a bit inconsistent.
Oh no, I still think that Caps is the best performing individual player at this tournament. I think he's incredible. I think it's either him or Gala now. Gala's really good. But yeah, Caps has been.
Owners had a good tournament. There you go.
I don't rate G2, but I can't dispute your Caps point, so I'm going to be quiet.
Yeah,
so the thing is,
the difference.
Caps and G2 so this could be a complete aside. So I've been doing some VOD reviews myself on my stream and a couple of things, and I showed something earlier today. You can go check my stream VOD and shit like that, which is Nymaera with an underscore. But there's one thing which G2 do some things uniquely well and uniquely badly. Because what they end up doing is like, when they're really on their game, they have such a way of flowing between plays where like one big play happens and actually in the process, so there's a point in their first victory versus RNG where there's a big fight down bot side. I'm sure many of you will remember Caps getting like 3 kills. Awesome. Wow. Zoe God. Yankos actually comes down and just about makes it to the end of the play and forces Xiaohu's flash at the end of it on Wukong. But while he's doing that, he goes down, he half clears mid lane, stacks mid lane, bot lane has died in the initial fight, can then go from their respawn to mid to shove in the wave, which has been set up during the big play, so they can make a big play afterwards. They have this sense of like chaining plays together, which was really, really good on their win streak in the first bit. And like that's really cool to see. I think that RNG have a similar thing where they'll like big plays happened, teleport in for a second big play. That's really good. Just understanding what's on the table and doing that. But what G2 sometimes do when they fall behind is they skip all of those transition steps, and then they just they lose 2 big plays in a row instead of like getting
and then everything else,
and then everything falls apart.
Yeah.
So like I think that G2 are going to be a threat in best of 5s. I'm looking forward to seeing them versus T1, which is now their determined opponent. But like they play a risky style. It goes really well, really quickly, or really bad just as well, just as fast.
You summed it up perfect for me because there's a mental game thought that there is the state of flow, whereas when you are in the zone, if you've ever been at a video game where everything you just know exactly.
Happens to creative freshness or anything performative. Yeah.
So the state of flow is what it's called, and I think G2 are honestly the definition. When they're on it, it feels like everything is perfect. They are one unit. They are one. When it's not, it looks like 5 monkeys. But I mean, hey, that's the G2 life, right? Like, I mean, they've made it all the way to groups. We'll have to see how they do in the best of 5s. It was a bit spicy, and I did live for the world where PSG Talon did maybe get to knock them out. I was really hopeful in this last day, but they didn't beat RNG, so they weren't going to get it. Have to beat RNG. God damn it. Gentlemen, should we get into our probably final big topic for today?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because we're getting deeper. I didn't even realize how long we've been going for. It's already 50 minutes or so.
Holy moly.
Oh, yes, exactly. Let's talk about the format because it's been all that any other person will talk about. Nymaera's tweeted about it. I've tweeted about it. Initialise has tweeted about it. We've all given our opinions in different forms. And guess what? We've only got like 100 and something characters in a tweet. And can't really sum it up. So, gentlemen, the MSI format continues as for the second year. Sadly, a team was unable to attend. As such, they decided to run back last year's MSI format. Remember, this is still a brand new format for MSI, ladies and gentlemen. We have Pool 1 teams, meaning the teams from the top 3 regions. They are T1 from LCK, RNG from the LPL, and G2 from the LEC. We've got our Pool 2 teams of Evil Geniuses from the LCS. I'm doing this all from memory, by the way. I'm just looking at your 2 lovely faces. We have Saigon Buffaloes from the VCS, and we have PSG Talon from the PCS.
I know you were dying to say LMS there. It's the PCS.
I really did. I almost was like, I wanted to almost just go Flash Wolves, but it's not. It's not.
It's PCS. It's PCS from the Flash Wolves.
From the Flash Wolves, LMS. Wait, no, that's not that. We had our Pool 3 teams, and this is where I might get a bit wrong, but we've got Team A's from the LLA, and we've got who's another Pool 3? Who's a Pool 3 team? Who's better than us, supposedly?
I can tell you if you'd like.
Go on, I'm going to struggle here.
Technically, you've got TCL who are better than us. So technically, the Istanbul Wildcats, rather.
Right, yeah.
They're also technically better than us. And I believe, actually, Peace were a Pool 3 team as well.
No, Peace were a Pool...
Oh, were they Pool 4?
Pool 4. Peace were Pool 4.
Oh,
it was the Unicorns of Love, or
so
whoever would be the
A's,
representative from the UCL.
Yeah. Well, it would have been a Team Spirit,
CIS, yeah.
You've got LCL, TCL, and LLA, who are Pool 3. And then we're in Pool 4. Then you also had CB LOL, which was the Red Cannons. Then you also had Order, which are OCE. So that's your stratified levels. And there are some notable awkward points in that. Namely, LJL is probably not a Pool 4 team.
No. It seems like Riot has kind of stuck on a historical factor of prior to 2020 almost, which, hey, in a sense, I kind of get it because everything's been so topsy-turvy. But yeah, let's start with the pools because I feel like all these pools are whack. I'm sorry, this is gonna get me something probably. Someone's gonna be in my DMs at some point. LLA should be a pool 4 team. Tell me I'm wrong.
I actually, the thing is that the LLA
probably.
fans were like, "Wait, why are we here instead of LJL because of last year?" So
okay.
I think that I think that given what happened in 2020, and then also the fact that in 2021 rather, in fact, in terms of
not
how
2020,
the
man.
worlds, like I think that's reasonable. I think that LLA have typically not performed that well internationally. Not that they can't climb to that point again, but yeah, I think that's fairly accepted at this point.
I mean, are there any other teams? I mean, Peace. I don't feel like Order should have been in that one. I mean, Pentanet just doing really well for a year.
Yeah, I think also that this is a problem with having a pool system rather than a seeding system, because it means that if actually you have teams that are you've got a lot of teams at a similar level, and then there's a drop off to the next guys, you have this issue, right? It's like, okay, there's probably quite a lot of teams that are equivalent to pool 3-2, right? LJL, VCS, PCS, probably not.
I
or at least,
don't
DFM.
think there are many which are equal to pool 2. I think
pool 2, but like
I think you have. I think you have.
Yeah,
I think you have like DFM currently punching up to pool 2 and are probably on thereabouts at that level. I think that's fair. You see Saigon Buffalo, PSG getting close to each other. DFM are close to Saigon Buffalo. EG again, you can see that they're not the pool 1 teams, but they're still markedly better than the ones below that. I know people are going to say, oh, but didn't we go 1-1 versus A's? I think you can put that last game particularly as a bit of a mental boom, and you can also see how he dealt with in the first game with an accidental lock-in. You can argue that if you want. I think the games versus Saigon Buffalo pretty much showed what I would say, and that might be an incorrect observation, but what we've seen before historically, I think you're looking likely that, you've got like a load of pool 2 teams, and then you've got like DFM who shouldn't be in pool 4. That's the big egregious one.
So I mean, my obvious issue, and I think I completely, I think this is kind of the middle ground between doing a proper seeding system, like Stan was suggesting, and what they've currently got. Just get rid of pool 4. Just every minor region is pool 3. I'm sorry. At some point, it's just luck of the draw. Like, is it really that much of a difference between like a pool 3 and a pool 4 team? Half of the time, if you just look at them randomly.
Yeah, I mean, last year also had a really good performance last year. Yeah, I suppose last year, you're right.
But then also you think of like Supermassive in previous years has been a super team.
So
and this is the thing, right?
So put it blue shell, right?
So, but this is the thing, right? I feel like currently this pool system does not give you a good indication of how these teams are actually ordered. So yes, there are 2 ways you do this. Either luck of the draw. What I was saying on Twitter earlier is you need a way to effectively sort out your pools for you, or a seeding system. And the way I would do that is actually bring back a form of Rift Rivals. The reason Rift Rivals failed is that it had 0 implications or anything. No one really cared outside of experience. No one wanted to watch nothing with implications. And a lot of the time it was mid-split, so the teams didn't particularly care for it either. Particularly in the major regions, that's one thing. I don't think major region Rift Rivals has much of an angle right now. I think for minor regions, I think it can work.
Pretty cool.
Now, I think this could work in 2 different ways.
It's a bit of an
MSI, I think what you do is you use a Rift Rivals to determine the pool system for whoever gets to go there. And I think what you do is you send your top 2 teams from the region, so you actually get a way to get your second seeds from a region, which is typically a 1-seed region, international experience. I think that opens up development for a league, which often gets top-heavy with teams like Rainbow 7, which inherited Leon's spot from the LLA and the LATAM like split leagues, because that team has won 13 times regionally. DFM has also won 13 times regionally. These teams keep going internationally, and they bring back and tend to hoard a lot of that experience. Now, I think DFM has developed with that. I actually think that they've done pretty well with that experience in terms of teams which go internationally a lot. But there is always going to be this bottleneck of no one else can go and learn from that. And they don't get to get those scrim bucks and be able to go to other places. So what happens if you do have VCS, LJL, PCS playing for
and OCE as well? Why not?
Or OCE, or maybe it's something like these are potentially 2-seed regions, and you can have them playing for that second spot at Worlds, or you have them basically playing off for the pool seeding, right? And maybe you split it in 2 because all the minor regions can't work for can't all do this together. But you have like the Eastern minor regions in terms of your OC, your LGL, PCS, VCS, for their seeds in Plains or MSI, they play for
Ooh, Otis is gonna have a rough time there.
Then you have like then you basically split and say TCL, LCL, CBLOL, play on the other side. And then you have like 2 stratified groups, and it's like these are the ones in your pools, effectively. I think there are ways that can work out. I don't think that's going to be perfect. I think at that point, it's like, but isn't there points where like you've got really strong ones on one side and not on the other? Potentially, but I still think it gives stakes for a competition, which helps develop and helps also give you some kind of benchmark, which we don't have right now.
And
it's
sending
better
2
than nothing.
teams helps a lot of that, I think. I think
Yeah.
you beginning with that, with the 2-team part, I was like, but then I
But
realized
those 2 teams don't play against each other.
Yeah.
Those 2 teams don't play against each other. So that's what used to happen in Rift Rivals, right? So you look back to like the event where we beat GARM. It was the OPL, OC, LJL, like LMS Rift Rivals. And we ended up fucking winning that. We beat GARM. And we sent 2 teams. And effectively you play everyone else plays every other team, but you don't play each other, kind of thing. So that's really cool.
So and like to jump in here a little bit as well quickly. So while you guys were discussing like what the format currently is, I was doing a little bit of Googling to find the group stage stats on like viewer numbers and stuff and what the games are at. And they are pretty ugly, I think, is unfortunately the way to look at it, because it is a hours watched is down 37%, average viewers down 37%, peak viewers down 30% this year compared to last year's at MSI. And lots of that can be attributed to things like the weird semi-remote nature of it, the ping issues, the replayed matches, the lack of on-site casters, certain casters deciding that they weren't going to be attending or were attending other events or whatever else. There's lots of stuff in there. Part of it as well is also format stuff. It is always going to be an issue in your format where if one team not turning up screws your format's in trouble. And that was part of the problem with the LPL stuff. That said, like a lot of people have then tried to basically say, look, people don't want to watch minor region stomps versus the big teams. The games that were the most watched were T1 versus DFM. They were T1 games, and then it was people like DFM versus Saigon Buffalo. People want to watch these games. People want to watch those games. There is absolutely a market there. And while a lot of the major region fan bases might not be as interested, the minor region fan bases watch these broadcasts too, and they absolutely do care.
And you know what? I would actually dispute you a little bit. I think the Eastern major regions do give a shit about the minor regions, because guess what? Where they're looking for their next talent, our fucking minor regions. They're looking at us and going,
it's a lot of players they followed in the LCK or whatever.
And so basically there are a number of like overheads to this. One, I think the pools being the way that they are isn't great. I also think that currently the minor regions lack development options to start punching up. I think that's something like not a fully international cross-region competition can help with that. Something like Rift Rivals, which has some kind of implications, which means that you would need to put in time for that. You need to have some adjustments mid-split for that to accommodate for teams going off and doing this and not falling apart because they have an extra tournament in their schedule. But I think that can work wonders. So imagine if we did send DFM and Rascal Jester up against PCS and VCS and stuff like that. That's really good for them, actually. That's really, really good for both of them. And actually, if it does come to the point where actually that second seed changes, even if the first seed doesn't in a one-team dominated region, that means you're still spreading apart experience elsewhere. I think that's very important. Hell, and if you win at that point, you get a second seed, suddenly you've got both of them going to a major regional event, if that's going to be like one of the implications of this.
I mean, I want to just say something, because I just had a huge like Jimmy Neutron moment with all of this. Like, the sickest part is it actually also makes regular split mean something.
Yes. Yeah.
Holy shit, being top 2 there, suddenly it goes
top 2 at the halfway point or something like that.
Yeah, either you do the halfway point or you do it at the very end and you just say, hey, everybody, we're having a month off from MS till we actually do playoffs. There are issues with saying that. I know. I'm just
either you do it like
either
you do. I mean, it's difficult from doing it between regular season and playoffs, because I think that's a particularly dangerous point we're developing. I think you have to do it mid-split, unless it's oh god. I mean, I think you have to do it mid-split still. I think you have to do it like halfway point of the split. I think that's the easiest way to do it. I think that to deal with that
makes those games matter.
But I think you have a mid-split break at that point of a couple of weeks. I think there are difficult ways to do it. I think it means a lot to the minor regions. I think what you lose in terms of the teams maybe having a more rigorous schedule, I think you gain in what you develop in the region. You need to be very careful about how you go about that. But what it also does is also on a broadcast sense in terms of because there are ways that this implicates MSI, and I think the MSI format, if the pools are sorted, looks a little better. I don't think it solves it completely yet. I think you actually go to the World's Plans format, you have 2 groups, you play off single round robin, and then you best of 5 after that point. I think that's the way you do MSI again. I think that's the better format, and it also means you get to see best of 5 between these tier 2 regions with like your DFM, your Saigon Buffaloes, and that's a hell of a viewership draw. You don't get to see tier 1 dunking on teams twice over. You only have to see them do that one time, and that's cool. And then you're going to move on from that. I think that's the best way to do it. But the pool system helps you even out those groups. You're not left with the very lopsided groups, which we've seen in this one, I would say.
Exactly. And to add in on that, it is important to note, people actually do want to watch, DFM versus T1. They also want to watch DFM versus Saigon Buffalo.
More than EG versus G2, apparently.
Yeah, a little bit, honestly. The most watched, the most watched language at the minute, obviously because Chinese is kind of dropped out a lot of these stats because the stats are difficult to get and often slightly unreliable due to a lot of view bots for some of the Chinese sites, which obviously it's a weird one, and that's a whole other discussion. The viewership in China is crazy, but it's also hard to work out how accurate it is, all of those things. But actually the most watched sort of stream is the Korean stream, not the English stream. With that kind of thing. But people want to watch the minor regions play off against each other. They also want to watch the minor regions play against big teams because that's cool to watch. You want to watch your team take on someone like T1, and that is clearly the viewers are there for it to spot that. And Riot obviously want to cater to that because they would be foolish not to enjoy it better. But the problem is the format needs to change to make a lot of the other games still worth watching, and you still want to actually get a best of series between some of these other minor region teams. You want to see DFM versus Saigon Buffalo. That should have been a match. So that should have been the best of.
It should have been. And what I'm saying is obviously Rift Rivals makes it more likely to have those regional rivalries happen. And this helps in a couple of ways. One, I think it's fair to say a lot of these minor regions are not really being given, they don't tend to get a lot of relevant airtime on major broadcasts because actually most of them aren't going to be there for longer than 4 best of 1s, 6 best of 1s. In terms of okay, so Team A's, because they were largely getting dunked on, they had about 1, 2 best of 1s which are actually relevant to them. The one that they won and maybe another one that gets close to them. Now,
seeing those poor guys after T1 losses was just
tough, but then also the one that they win is huge, right? But there's gives and takes to this. But effectively, a lot of your lower tier minor regions, or all the ones which are just in tough groups or whatever, are going to be on your mental radar very short amounts of time. You're not going to actually take in a lot of those storylines. And that also means on a main broadcast, they often don't want to spend that time on those minor storylines, or they will do for one pre-game because they don't actually have that many games to cover them. And there are more important games during the day. It's not as efficient for them to cater towards their viewership. So having something like a Rift Rivals to build up some of those storylines, to have casters with hands-on time with them, because we don't actually have official English broadcasts for all of these minor regions. I think that helps you hero build these players, hero build these teams, which is something that the LEC does incredibly well. A casual viewer of the LEC knows a lot about its players and teams. Probably a casual viewer of the LEC knows more about its teams than any other esports broadcast in the world. That's what the LEC does well. Now, do they sometimes ham-fist it and do the rivals, kings, legacies, dynasty shit like that? Yes, but you do know the team's better than most other people watching their leagues. And I would say that something like your minor regions don't have that because you don't have relevant airtime and content around them to really do that. And I don't think it's necessarily a mistake of main broadcasts to not put as much time into them, but I do think that actually no. What I will say is I can understand why they do it. I think it's a mistake. I understand why they do it. So I'm not going to say it's because I think that you should be portraying your Saigon Buffaloes, your DFMs, your PSG Talons with a much more critical eye and a much more clinical view on them, knowing their stories rather than just being oh, it's this team from X region again. We saw them last World, and it's okay, actually, but what if you had a check-in mid-split? What happens if you have a Rift Rivals? What happens if it's because PSG, I'm sure many people would have seen that team come in and go, don't they have Maple and River? Don't they have those two?
Isn't that
no, it's that Doggo guy,
Where's Doggo? It's Benji, and it's unified, right? And it's the kind of thing where you have mid-split relevant international tournaments for them, and it helps build those identities, helps build those players and those teams. And it also means you have casters with more hands-on English broadcasts with them, so they're more familiar with them, instead of actually having not great reads on some of the minor regions, which does tend to happen on a lot of major broadcasts because you have to prep so many teams. Sometimes stuff falls through the net.
But
I think there's a lot of ways this succeeds.
But they could just get in contact with regional experts and bring them on.
And some of them do, right? And some of them do.
Yeah,
I'm glad for the ones that do.
The PCS has a legitimate English broadcast. and I don't think I heard a single voice from any of the experts on the MSI broadcast, unless I missed something. Which
I
don't
have
know.
to say, like, because off season's been a bit like I haven't had any work. I've actually been listening half asleep to most of the games because it's really early in the. Well, it's kind of early in the morning for me.
It is.
So I actually,
early in the
so I'll
morning,
have to take your word for that. I don't know about that one.
I mean, I've not heard anything, and I just think that's one prime example for me, because they have an English broadcast, they have got experts. It just feels like they maybe got forgotten about, or maybe they got asked a few questions by the talent on the broadcast, and then that was it. The other thing I want to talk about, gentlemen, because we talked about the pool-based system, but let's just say we are stuck with this pool. We are stuck with it for whatever reason. Someone at Riot signed the deal with the devil so they could at least always have MSI happen, right? They ever since 2020, they were like, we're not having MSI again, right? Is there a better way, though, that they could draw out the groups? Because I'm of the opinion half of the issue is actually just the group part. Because I think you could quite frankly put probably LCK, LPL, LCS, and LEC into a group together. Okay, hear me out. I know I can see your look there, confusion.
I'm gonna have to see where this is going, buddy.
So you
I know. I was like, well, hang on, like, all right, hold on, people.
Right.
We're
Right,
going down
this is
a
a
rabbit hole here.
Lexi special here, ladies and gentlemen. So they play a Swiss. They play Swiss, right? Double Swiss. Okay. If you don't know what Swiss is, it means everybody plays everybody twice. And then that's it. After they've done that, right? The top two teams into first and second seed. They're in the group stage. They're not even groups. They're already in the playoffs, right? They've already made it through. They're there. Good for them. They don't have to play more. All the minor regions get thrown into a Royal Rumble scenario kind of situation with a loser bracket. With a fucking loser bracket, we play best of threes. Some team goes in, they're out after losing 2 rounds. It's virtually the same fucking thing with 4 games. Guess what? Crazy. I don't know. I just think
you have the problem there. You have the problem there of it will do exactly what International Wildcard Qualifier did. It is a lot of it's a lot of games which people do not give a shit about. International Wildcard
do
Tournament
they still not?
They do. You look at the viewership from last year. I think last MSI, you look at like your DFM versus your C9s, your DFM versus your that one from our perspective, right? But then you also look at Red Canids this year when they have them in the group stage. I think just having a major region presence to draw some people's eyes because these games might affect them already has an impact on them. Now, I think we have too much of that right now in terms of like, I do think that when you have, so actually there was so put it this way, there's a thread up on Reddit right now on the League Reddit. There were 66 best of ones so far after groups and Rumble. Now, 39 of those games were between major regions, and so basically the top 4 regions, and then also your minor regions, including VCS, PCS. And the score of that was 3-36 for the wildcards. Now, that is too bad. Those are a lot of stomps. I think that has a lot of groundwork for XYZ. You look back to last year, you look at how VCS has upset people pretty consistently. PSG are probably in their weakest form they've been in years, and they've still taken games off of people like G2. They TO'd them, the 2 of them in the Rumble stage. Look at your DFMs, which did have that even record with C9. I think that by cutting off that possibility, you're actually cutting off some of the most historical moments you can get in League of Legends. And I think that is a huge loss if you do that.
I don't disagree, but I mean...
Yeah, plus it's like often when you look at like other tournaments with seeding systems, the best team gets to play off against the worst by virtue of being the best, if you know what I mean. That is the what's the
luxury.
word? Like the luxury of being the best team. Like you get the easier matchup, or unfortunately for the people lower down the rankings, like that's a harder matchup because unfortunately you're lower down the rankings. That's often the way things are. That's true in tennis. It's true in a lot of like fighting game communities. It's hard to pull off in League, but that is like a pretty consistent thing because it often ends up with the fairer, I guess, or the more consistently expected results. Adding a losers bracket, I think, is a cool call. In fact, I understand why you'd have that losers bracket, and I can understand why, or at least with your discussion, you'd say, okay, some people get to move straight on to playoffs. I think you then see less of those teams, which is not good for viewership, and so they wouldn't want to do it.
I think
you
we
don't want to say, okay, I've only seen 2 games from T1 and now they're in the playoffs, or I've only seen 2 games from, or rather like, or like 5 games.
Again,
from
I just think you
RNG,
do
now
World's
they're in the
Plans
playoffs, I won't see
format.
until
I
then.
think you do
And
World's.
that
I think
won't
you do
do as
World's
well.
Plans format.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you
I
fully.
agree.
So put it this way: when you have the international wildcard system and you don't have the MSI first seeding groups, the LJL went 8 years without playing against a major region's first seed. 8 fucking years. And I think that regardless of the level of competition, that's a bit too much. I don't even care if it was once in those, like once a year or whatever. It's just a random major region or whatever. And maybe it is the kind of thing where like your major regions start off in an upper bracket, and then it's just like they have like an extra couple of lives or something like that. So if they do miraculously lose, then they actually drop down or whatever. And maybe you have like maybe not GSL, but maybe something like a TI bracket or something like that. You start with an upper and a lower bracket. Maybe that works out.
I think I hate the fact that we are clearly defined by viewership, and how much viewership defines the success of the broadcast. And
but if that wasn't the case, then we wouldn't be doing best of ones, because best of ones is purely there for pro broadcast.
Yeah,
it makes it easier to predict broadcast. That's exactly it. It's not best for competition; it's best for broadcast.
Yeah, and I don't think we should have it. I understand why we will, and we are beholden to it.
Variance, upset potential.
Variance isn't a good thing in a game with a lot of variance already built into it necessarily, especially when patches do wild changes. Yeah, I'm talking to you. I struggle to see that this is like, I do agree. I do completely agree and see where you're coming from, Alex. We just divide everyone into 2, because then we at least get RNG versus T1 potentially, or RNG versus G2. That could be fucking dope, or T1 versus G2 or whatever. We do need another pool 1 team in that scenario, which I guess that's where we just add in LCS, I imagine, into a pool 1 spot. Right, if we use your play-ins wildcard format, right? So there are options. I still want to see an actual proper version of this MSI format actually work out, hopefully with full teams from all of the regions actually represented. But also something I think that we're still lacking would be, what about if the international wildcard tournament had to come back, but it was actually for those regions that don't get representation?
Maybe you do like a half wildcard tournament, and then, well, this is the thing, right?
Like it's almost like an open tournament at that moment.
So let's just say, like, I would actually like to have. So I had this conversation with Alex, and I don't know how you'd even do it, but I think it would be super cool to actually have a wildcard tournament for some actual wildcard teams, where it's like actual open tournaments. So someone like Carmine Core could come in and try and get to Worlds, right? Or like some of these other big teams, or some of the crazy NA amateur teams.
It would have to be. You cannot be in a Riot accredited region, but the problem with that is that there are a lot of problems with that on a marketing perspective.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know, but it's like, you look at how
the marketing
international
team
has, like, the international has a caster team that come in and does like plays in through through some wild cards.
Oh, does it? Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, like it is absolutely doable, and I think you could get some really cool things. And you like literally just have an open invitation for like maybe 2 slots to go into the group stage, and I think you get some really cool stuff in there. And again, not all, like, again, some of those early streams would be a little bit low viewership, but I think you could end up with some really cool things later on down the line. And actually, if you do a lot of that potentially remotely or whatever, I think you could do some cool stuff there.
There are some issues. There are some issues in terms of MSI is already a very long tournament in regards to broadcast. They don't really want to run it over a month. So if you have to add another stage or increase the amount of games by too much, it gets a bit weird, which is why, again, I think actually having a mid-split separate tournament, which then impacts those tournaments, is potentially better, because the idea which you're kind of spinning together is like almost like an international wildcard before the groups. So it's kind of like a play into the groups to the Rumble to the playoff side. So you're adding a 4th stage. I'm just wondering if you do that a little earlier in terms of mid-split, which then implicates what happens. Maybe it's the kind of thing where it's that because of the performance of PCS in a Rift Rivals, they actually get to send another team through to a Worlds group stage, or send another team through to, I don't know, something like that. Or you eliminate certain teams from XYZ at that point. I just think that it gets a little bit awkward to increase the length of the actual event. You need to do it separately, because they've shown in the past that they don't want to do that.
I mean, another option, which Riot will never do, so I can gladly say this on the podcast, You know what would be really cool, lads? Imagine if they did the winner or top 2 from EU Masters, the top 2 from Demacia Cup or Academy from LPL, top 2 teams from their Academy, top 2 from Challengers, maybe one team from every wildcard region that didn't make it but made it to finals. I don't know, just something where you could get all the best Academy teams together in one tournament and just do the Academy World Championships or something. Like the emerging talent championship or something. I don't know.
Like this. Yeah,
we're pining for more international events. Full stop.
This is the weak side of a lot of franchise leagues, effectively, because unlike something like, say, Counter-Strike, I suppose is the one that obviously probably most comes to mind as one that's had the major and stuff recently as well.
Yeah,
you teams that get to participate in general Counter-Strike tournaments aren't region locked. They're not locked by, like, again, you get some that are invited to a lot of majors. You've got, but before that, things like the RMRs, right? So you go through to try and get your points to get to lock a major seed, that kind of thing. Those are pretty much, there are, you don't have to be a team of any note to get there, right? Like you can be 5 random people, but they get it eventually. There's some qualifiers and stuff to do it, but you can do that, right?
Yes.
And there is no system like that with LoL right now, and that's true of other things like Champions League or the World Cup or whatever else to an extent, right? For the World Cup being like football or rugby or whatever, like again, it is like one country gets to send one team, all of that kind of stuff. But I think it is a weakness of a franchised system, especially one as heavily controlled and moderated as the one that the league has. And there are strengths to it, but this is a downside to it.
Do we still feel like the benefits of franchising are now hindering the international level of play, or maybe not level of play is a correct term, maybe just the overall enjoyment? Because for me, I actually do think I'm slightly affected now by franchising because it's now hit minor regions as well now.
So I think there are always going to be pros and cons, right? It's better for the money coming in, but then again, esports are showing that it doesn't know how to handle money anyway. I don't think we've seen... Look, I don't know if it... Because it started in what? 2019 was the first year of LEC. So we've had it for 3 years now. Maybe ask in 2 years.
Like that.
And I do think the LEC has actually grown quite well from it. I think it's more a case of what you do with it, because I think that even with this, I think the LEC has a couple of orgs which don't know what to do with their content and how to build their players and how to develop. I think that there are some teams which are starting to grow into it. Because you've got like even LCS has some teams which are a good example of this. Like FlyQuest has done great. I love FlyQuest.
100
FlyQuest is actually
Thieves
one of my
came out of
favorite
nowhere,
orgs. I think that they've done a really good job with their branding. But then you have teams like I think C9's in a bit of a dead zone, but like you've got but I think it's actually more of a problem for TSM, Cloud9, Team Liquid. Their brand is we win. They can't always do that. They actually haven't done that much when you compare it to EG and 100 Thieves, which are actually
I think that's unfair for Cloud9. I think
that's why I said they're in a bit of a grey area. But a lot of the time it is about we win.
TL are very good because they're... You know what? I'm not going to go into this, but basically TL have thrown themselves in a wider net from a business perspective, not necessarily from a league perspective, which I would agree with you. Their identity in league is we win. So I think you're right on them. TSM are definitely struggling, though. And I think they are definitely feeling it, the pinch more than everywhere. Because guess what? Who the fuck wants to play for TSM now?
I think that, I mean, I think that there are some... I think there are some org reputations which definitely kind of get very visible.
Thrown through the ringer.
They get thrown through the ringer. I think the thing for me in terms of like the franchising thing is because at the end of the day, so if you had unsuccessful teams which then use franchising as a way to build up, I think that's a success story. I think that FlyQuest typically could have been one of them. I could have seen them getting relegated. I think actually a great example of this from the LEC is Rogue. Rogue did an awesome job at this. They have big personalities. They know how to handle their image. Their social media game's good. They've developed and got success. Mad Lions, very similar, right? They found what, not on the marketing social side of things, but as a team, they've done that. I think on the social side of things, when they haven't built their players up like that.
It's fallen apart a bit, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I think actually
SK's ironically the opposite way around, right? They've done a
and that's the thing.
fantastic job with the content stuff,
Exactly.
But they haven't got the success to back it up really as yet. But like, I cannot speak highly enough of the absolute random shit the SK content team has come out with. Is some wonder. Has anybody seen the pool party stuff where they went to this crazy indoor tropical
Fucking great, yeah.
place in Berlin with the whole team from League? It's great. It's completely random. It's wonderful. And it's great personality stuff.
Yeah. So I think
like that content game is really good.
I think and that's when you see like, and I think that will actually stand them in good stead. I think that it helps actually garner a following, and then the following helps kind of build the atmosphere, and then that atmosphere kind of fixes a lot of things. Actually, I think it's actually undervalued how much that attitude can really help. So yeah, I think that franchise, but then you lose out on stories like your Rocks Tigers and a couple of teams and Griffin, right? You know, these teams which are like super huge teams which promote, do crazy things, they find themselves a great place within the current meta, and they develop and they do very well. I think that the problem is as much as it protects great teams, it protects teams which are infinitely less invested and actually not great for your league. I think that's a big problem. So yeah, I think those are your pros and cons, right? I'm not going to say it's good or bad. I think it's good for certain teams and bad for others.
And I know the argument that's going to be brought up is it's great for money. It's great for cash flow in general for players and everything. People's salaries go up. I'm sorry, it's not like any of these players weren't. A lot of the major region players were streaming way back in the day. A lot of them, it's known, were making decent to comparable salaries to what the average is at the moment now in most of LCS and LEC. I can only talk about the medium, not the top end. I'm not talking about the people getting paid stupid fucking money. And it is stupid fucking money. But hey, if everyone was on stupid fucking money, everyone could afford to actually have a social media team to actually run them and build them a brand. But they don't get paid that. So it's kind of in a weird spot.
Yeah. Also, like, you're asking a lot of like 16-year-olds to be like social media savvy when what you are is often, and again I generalize, but let's be real, a lot of these people are basically full-time gamers who aren't the most socially well adjusted, don't have a lot of life experience, are now expected to do this 7 days a week with your spare time then basically also been playing the game. These people don't know how to be unless you are naturally good at it or you're a streamer on top of things. Most of these people aren't going to know how to manage a social media account, how to build a brand, all this other stuff, because that's a really hard skill. And when you are, coming in having basically spent 2 years being that weird geeky gamer at school to come in to do this as a professional job, like that's hard work. You look at someone like he's a good example, Faker, right? He his brand was I am the best, basically, and he kind of got away with it by being really, really good. And you can see his improvement at social media over the years, but a lot of that's been T1 doing it for him, and then him getting people involved, and then they finally got him streaming. But that is,
and I think
that's systems around him.
Point, Sam. All these fucking orgs need to be putting a lot more money into their players and the assets that they are, and the team as a whole from a brand perspective. I'm sorry. Stop throwing money into your actual own Twitter account. Throw it into your players' Twitter accounts, and by proxy, it will go into yours, the ones that actually care about the team. Because I think a lot of teams balloon their own strategy
can get a bit,
and then they do it. Yeah, social media is a whole nother thing. It's a whole nother topic. It's not important for here. MSI was what we were trying to talk about.
We have meandered again, gents.
Yeah, because it's more like the ecosystem, right? Because we're talking about minor regions, development of them. Well, actually, how's that worked in the major regions? Can we apply that in any way to minor regions, and how's this affected minor regions? Yeah, I think it has a lot of ways to think that. What you see in the major regions can largely be analog to what's happening in minor ones too. In some ways, even larger, right? Because you have even more bottom feeders, orgs, because they actually don't see a way to find success. They're just kind of there. Plenty of teams
I don't know
do
how
that.
those orgs function. I have to assume sometimes there's just money laundering going
on.
I'm sorry.
There's a lot of at the very least there's a lot of
exploitation. I'm not touching that one with the
There's a lot of exploitation.
I'm just gonna say it out there. I'm not gonna say a fucking team. I'm just gonna be like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can see a lot of parallels in the ERL system as well, but at least there's progression there, and at least there, I think that, so put it this way, I think the ERL system is great. I think it still has exploitation in it. I think it's still got really bad business practices around the place. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can apply that with the minor regions. Like I said, though, I think that on the whole, I think a lot of things with minor regions can start to be alleviated and improved when you do have actually a ability to develop them outside of the mainstream international events. Now, that might put some pressure on the regular season. I get how there's some negatives. I think the positives outweigh that. That's the way that I would go about first tackling the MSI problem in terms of the gap between minor and major regions, the pool system. I think that can be sorted out with that. I think the format of the MSI also needs a tweak. I think this helps it go the extra mile, though. So that would be my take on it.
I think I want to see a format where we actually get all 4 teams in each of these groups to see how it plays out. But at the same time, I think you've got a fair point, Alex. What about if instead what about we just did best of 5s all the way? We just did a big bracket.
All right, we've solved it.
Figured it out.
Over. There it is. We figured it out. Lexi's done it.
The big bracket with a loser bracket, and it's just who's playing. I don't know. Bang.
It's best of 5s all the way down. That's what it is.
Monte Cristo would come back. Maybe Monty would come back to Riot for a special guest. No, he's never doing that. Sam, what's your take on the bracket?
It's a man called Conti Misto with a giant mustache and a big hat on. I'm
trying to think
with an unusual love of Korea.
I was trying to say like Krista Monty, and it's just like opposite Monte Cristo. And I'm wondering what that would be.
He's just doing a handstand with a mustache.
Why a handstand?
Well, no. You know the hilarious thing is that if it was anti-Monty, wouldn't it just be Jat? Like based off the old memes.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
That'll be a fun one.
Sam, would you fix the bracket?
Oh boy. We discussed most of the
we did. I want your 5 cents.
I think probably more like a world setup is better. Well, at least the play-in setup where they've had, I think that's actually been a pretty good system. I would like to see a losers bracket in at least for somewhere in this. I think that the issue is you do need to see, or the Riot will absolutely, from a marketing point of view, from a viewer point of view, want to see minor region versus big team, because actually people do want to see Red Canids versus a big team or DFM versus a big team. There is viewers there, and for all that we want this to be a competitive experience for Riot, this is as much a marketing thing as well, and I get that, but as a result, some concessions to full competitive integrity is the wrong word, but full competitive focus do take some of a hit on the result of that. And actually for us, we want to see some of those matches.
We do.
Fans often,
or
at least a significant portion do. But on that side, you also really do need to cater towards actually getting something like DFM versus Saigon Buffalo, or something we're thinking of here, PSG versus Red Canids in a best of 5, right? Where actually those are matches which are a bit closer and people actually want to see. And I think probably the play-in system for World is better. I agree with Alex that having a Rift Rivals Riot system beforehand will be a good way to determine who gets at least 2 seeds going in, even if it's not a direct correlation to who qualifies for Worlds. It at least decides how many teams qualify from a region. I think it would need some kink sorting. I think the current system is a bit of a mess.
Rankles, right? I think potentially it'd be like, you don't want to deny regions from being at Worlds because it's meant to be a global event. Maybe at that point you actually introduce extra seeds. MSI typically hasn't done that, so you probably need to do that to just determine pool seeding. There are kinks there. I think the overall idea of having some relevant competition for minor regions outside of those events potentially help build them up, potentially help give them a bigger footprint. There's a lot of ways it can work out for them.
Yeah. We just need more competitions in general, globally, for teams to play in. But hopefully, with the world slightly returning back to normal as well, we might actually get that. We might get that, gentlemen. So we'll see. We'll see. Ladies and gentlemen out there, I'll be honest, I've not really looked. If you've got any questions for us, ask us in the Twitch chat or over in our Discord. I need to do the thing. You can tweet at us with hashtag LJL podcast. use that, we'll find you, or you can join our Discord, link down below or in the show notes. You can jump in there, ask us a question, we'll do it, or in our DMs, respectively, MaskedSwan, Initialise, and Nymaera. We'll try our best not to answer it then and there, but we'll probably answer it in the DMs and then on the podcast, because that's just what we do with just nice guys like that. We got any questions, gents? Or
Wait, Viper Princess asked this question that we've actually answered in the podcast anyway, in terms of when would these events happen. I think as we kind of like process elimination, it would kind of have to happen mid-split. You can't really do it just before playoffs. I think that gives too much tape on the players just before they go into playoffs. I don't think you can do it post. You can maybe do it post playoffs, but then I think a lot of the teams haven't stuck around to scrim. Unless you have this weird thing in terms of like, oh, we're going to send 2 teams, and if you win, the second team actually goes to MSI. But then actually, it's just like, there's a lot of problems with that. I think mid-split is where it have to be, and then you have to start organizing your split around that. So,
I think there was a discussion. This would be a much broader change to the system, but there is a world where effectively what you do is you scrap spring split and you have a more open tournament system.
Don't subscribe to double list philosophy, mate.
But there was some discussion about, like, again, that would be a very dramatic shift. But like you effectively, or you get rid of, or you halve the season, right? But you just do a best of 1, best of 3 system, and then into an open tournament format, or at least a little bit more, because that way you open up for a little bit more international stuff to allow for a bit more competition on that front. Because we don't really have a consistent thing like Champions League or Six Nations or something to offer credible data for international seeding at the minute, which is a problem with the system as it is. And the calendar is too full, is the honest answer. Because we have 2 regular seasons, the calendar is incredibly full. So for teams that are consistently winning, there's no time off. And there is also then no space in the calendar for anything else to do some systems. So at some point, something has to give. And so that would be a potential very nuclear option, but at least something worth considering.
Yeah, and we know already that you can't combine spring to summer. LCS did that experiment last season, and apparently everyone collectively, people stopped caring. And I mean, in fairness,
too many meaningless games. You're trying to find ways to make games meaningful. I actually think that mid-split kind of international tournament for minor regions means that regular season matters a lot more. It means that actually you have relevant games against other minor regions. Again, it just adds stakes to everything. That's important.
Well, Nafar99 over in our Twitch chat actually asked us the question. Regular season is the biggest issue in a way Riot build leagues. Do you agree? I think, Sam, you completely agree with that statement. I agree to some extent.
I mean, I think it's super cool having consistent regular tournaments with regular weekly stuff going on, rather than big dearths between competition.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that is really cool. The question is more around the fact that there is not enough downtime or a way to fit. It's almost gone too far towards that direction where I hesitate to consistently compare to a lot of regular sports because it's not quite the same. The scale of leagues are different. The calendars are different. You know, you don't have a tournament every 4 years for a World Cup or whatever. You've got it every,
and we can't do the Dota system because we are franchises. We are not open.
And again, there's other stuff going in there, and that's part of an issue I have with at least to an extent franchising. I think you just need to have multiple tiers of franchising is the way you do it. So you actually have like a franchise system, which you actually go down to say like Div 3 or whatever is all franchise, and then you can actually go up and down a bit more, but that would involve a massive change up and you'd need way more money and all the rest of it to make that viable. So that's very difficult to do right now. But anyway, and actually things like the Six Nations or Premier League have that for Premier League. What's it called for rugby? Anyway, it's still the English Premier League, the EPL.
Yes, the LJL is a franchise. It's not. I don't know if it really.
It's a weird one.
So it's a weird one. It's not like I don't know if it's a franchise between just the teams and then Riot, JP, or whatever. But there is no promotion relegation, and it's the consistent 8 teams. It is only 8. So we don't have promo relegation. We used to have that up until I don't know 2019. Something like that. I think 2018 was the last year that happened. I think it was like 2019. So actually, that was the time LEC and LCS became franchise. So maybe that's the case.
It's 2019, I think.
Which is why we don't have
promo relegation. Teams didn't get in, that kind of thing, because it was the whole pentagram debacle. Yes, but like we don't have an international calendar where like teams just lose players in rugby or whatever to go play international events. Happens with football as well. Or teams will play Champions League and the Premier League at the same time, and you've got to try and balance out that. And effectively,
But that's
the way they
because
get around
those
that
teams
is they have
you're expected to have changing rosters anyway.
exactly.
You can't really do that in league. You can't have that in league, really.
And it's very hard to do that in league with how dedicated people are to roles, etc., and how much you need to practice. So, and how many games you play with.
But then, mate, you almost opened the lid there on practice around league and got me going. So I'm not doing that. But
yeah.
You're right.
So,
you're damn right.
Yeah. So that is the issue with following a league format with League of Legends, because you with the way things are, it's very challenging to run international competitions over the top of regular stuff. Plus, teams aren't really willing to travel as much to do in-person. You don't travel other people's stadiums, right? Very easily. They've tried it in Overwatch, and it was tricky because lockdown hit and stuff, and that was a bit of a mess.
Cool.
So to kind of combat that, you need to have a less intense regular season or just less of it. But that potentially hurts franchise money because you bought into a franchise league. And if your league is now not playing as much, you don't get as much money from sponsors and the rest of it. So that becomes an issue. So only the teams that get to go international get the money. So the rest of the teams go, what the hell? This isn't what I paid for. So you end up like all of this is intertwined, right? That becomes more and more of an issue.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many caveats around one thing or another, right? So we're kind of stuck with it. I do think that's an interesting thing. Alex, do you think we should reduce
business
spring
versus
season?
competition?
Only if, again, it is reducing it for high quality games, high quality regular games. If not, you're replacing like for like. It's no substance, and I think actually viewership and value is often determined by substance. Actually, at this point in league, because we have so many leagues. When you look at LPL, LCK, LJL, PCS, VCS, all in the same time slot as well. Like, there's a lot of there's a lot of content at this point. You know, the thing which I've done the most since I started going full-time casting is just watching league, and there's a lot of it. If you watched every league in the world, it would be incredibly hard to watch all of it. You just wouldn't sleep. You know, I know that Kelsey Moser, Emily Ryan, they've talked a lot about them just grinding VODs and just not sleeping effectively. That's something which can very easily happen. I think that there is a place to break open that monotony, and then again have higher value games which have implication on something like seeding or pool system. I think that's a good way to do it. I think it removes some of the obscuring of some of the back end of this is how we decide how pools go. I think it's much easier to have like this game determined it. Go watch that instead. I think that if you can remove parts of Spring Split or add a gap in the middle of it to go like, you're going to go off to do Rift Rivals now, I think that's a big thing. It just needs to be, and I know they tried that before. I mean, I know that it didn't go so well. I know that some players didn't want to play at Rift Rivals, but if it has stakes, I don't think it would work for major regions. I think for minor regions it would. Because it has more meaningful. I wouldn't do it for major regions.
Again, if you want Rift Rivals in major regions, then you need to cut the spring season a bit more short. Like,
well, I actually think there's a good idea here that I kind of was just thinking about, because I actually really enjoy the LCS lock-in tournament. Imagine if lock-in actually meant something more, and then they got some time off, and then they could go do Rift Rivals afterwards, and then actually the winner of the Rift Rival between EU and NA, then you get an extra seed. I don't know. I like the idea that you were suggesting more seeds. I
think again, better for minor regions than major regions. I think major regions they wouldn't want to do it. I think minor regions probably easier, right?
Well, I mean,
and again, none of us know the business ramifications around things like franchising and what was agreed on with that. We don't know what was agreed on with things like where Riot.
I mean, they're probably locked into a 15-year contract, so they can never change it.
All of that stuff, which I don't know how much of that is public, and how even if it is, I don't know it. Is the honest answer. So, like, you know. Yes, there are issues, and this is the problem. Is it like this is as much a business decision as it is a competitive decision, I guess, like a viewer enjoyment decision. Because actually, the problem is even the teams that suck are business partners, and they are on the board of directors effectively in some way or form. So they have rights in this, and rightly so. But that is part of being in franchising, right? So you can't just say, "Yep, well, everyone wants to watch Cloud19, Liquid 100 Thieves, Evil Geniuses. Sorry, CLG, you don't get to be involved in any of this stuff anymore, despite being a franchise person." Like that's not
No,
a
they're not
business
allowed to do
it's not
that.
legal. Never mind business stuff. So the stuff that comes in with this, and again, I'm throwing some names out there in terms of teams who've struggled over the last couple of years, etc. So that falls into that.
Yeah, we'll find out. We'll see, obviously, how they do over the next year or two, and see if there's any changes. And I think that'll be a great time for us to check in, like you said, Alex. Probably about an hour ago. Ask in 2 more years from now, and then we'll check in, because weirdly enough we've got back around to franchising again. Crazy. Gentlemen, very quick one from Kyle XYZ, I believe is their name. Apologies if I butchered you. It's got a 3. It's similar to you, Sam, with a 1.
Kylie XYZ, I believe.
Is it Kylie? I can't fucking read. Who's winning LJL?
DFM.
This is the thing. Again, it's probably DFM.
Oh wait, no, I missed. Wait, sorry, I read like 2 things and my brain did it. Who's winning MSI? That makes more sense considering the topic of this conversation.
That'll be interesting.
I think it's actually T1. I think that T1. I think they struggle to prep for multiple teams. I think they have incredible fundamentals in terms of fighting. I think once they actually get a read on a team, they're going to be really hard. Best of 5 gives them a lot of leeway. Like, you need to, in a best of 1, I think T1 have still made a lot of their games close, even when they are horribly outdrafted. Best of 5 with that amount of adaptation, yeah, it's gonna be rough.
Yeah. So I think Al's got a good point there. I think I'll add into that, just jump in on that one briefly, because I think what it will depend on is have T1 learn to draft.
Yeah.
Because you can see, like, they are smashing early games.
Well, this is the thing, right? When they've drafted reliable carries, they've done incredibly well. When they've done the Zyra and the Aphelios, that's been huge for them. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's RNG, basically. Because I think, actually, Xiaohu and Gala have been just fucking phenomenal. Wei's been Wei, which... and Bin has been Bin, which is been very up and down. Wei's Volibear is a thing, and yet somehow he still manages to be really smart about using Hex Gates to come and steal souls on Anyway, there is inconsistencies there, but like the key carries for RNG have been just so damn good and so hard to remove from games that they're always able to mid-game their way out. So yeah, I wonder whether Al agrees with that or not, because obviously he was chatting about T1's interesting.
So Vision Control is a little bit suspect right now.
So am I right in saying we've got T1 for Nymaera, we've got RNG for Initialise?
The thing is, I can't give this prediction having seen what they'll do.
I need you
I'll
to
go
lock it
T1.
in.
I'll go T1 because I think they'll fix it for a best of 5.
You're
but I think
both
RNG
wrong,
because
G2 are going to beat them. And then the script writers, I've already talked to them. Somehow, EG beat RNG. And then we get the EUNA finals that we always wanted or didn't want. Probably didn't want.
Is this 2019 all over again?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And EG are actually going to win. Jojo Pune is going to do the miracle run of a rookie winning their first title in a region and then also winning MSI. And it's going to be glorious. And NA talent reigns supreme, and that meme gets to keep going. I'll take my trophy when it happens.
I will let you huff that, and then I'm not going to acknowledge it. I'm just going to let it sit there. There you go.
Shit, man.
That was it. Yeah.
And that's the episode, ladies and gentlemen.
Don't forget to tell everyone that the LJL is dead, and they should watch this clickbait.
Sacrifice that goat.
Sacrifice the goat, and just remember, this is complete clickbait, and you should get everyone to click on it. So
yes.
Yeah. All the time. Like, multiple times, and watch for at least, like, 20 seconds or whatever to give us the view. I don't know what's the minimum to get a view. None of us know.
No.
I asked this expecting Lexi to know. Anyway.
Sorry, I was barely paying attention.
That's fine. It's getting late.
What did you ask me, sir? Sorry.
What's the minimum view to like? How long do you need to watch a video or listen to a podcast to get it counted as a view?
About 15 seconds on average to normally.
That is the minimum amount of time you will have to watch this, and I expect you will do it at least 5 times.
Okay. Nymaera,
With the ghost.
Yes,
sacrifice.
hello.
buddy,
Hello.
what are you getting up to over this next week or two till we have our next podcast
Uh,
episode?
Doing very little and looking at my phone for 10 hours a day.
good
Moving
life.
flat at some point.
Moving
NLC
flat.
is
Oh my god, yes.
NLC is going to come up at some point. I'll be doing a couple of streams maybe here and there. Outside of that, not very much.
Playing
I'm-
guitar on his Instagram.
Oh yeah, I do that a bit. I'm
Mm.
doing more music stuff. That's kind of me. Yay.
Cool. Initialise. So, what are your plans for the next few weeks?
Prepping for NLC, moving flat, possibly chasing up a couple of the cool casting opportunities,
Cool.
chasing up a cool music opportunity. None of these
Ooh.
things I can talk about.
Of course.
Just they're there. And probably reading a lot of books because it's still a little bit of time before I need to do more regular work again. I'm probably watching MSI, and I'll be watching things like playoffs. That's about
I did also recently start a Goodreads account,
it.
but I'm yet to properly start yet. I'll send you my link of what I've got on the
That's
list
fine.
at the moment.
Mine is like, despite having graduated from a lit background, my reading list is just full fantasy trash these days, and I love it. And everyone else can be.
Oh, read what you want.
Everyone else can be salty about. Everyone else can be salty about my reading choices.
For myself, I might keep making like casual YouTube videos. People seem to like it. I also don't try. I've realized that I shouldn't be trying to be super analytical and everything. I work far better where I put some analytical points in, and also I just give a bunch of satire points. Because apparently, people, even when they realize I'm kind of serious, but I'm not at the same time, they actually kind of go, oh, okay, I get where he's coming from. So I might do more of that. Over this next week or two, because my Twitter and everything else around MSI is pretty difficult because I have work at that time at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. But hopefully I will get to put the Simpsons signing gif at some point. I can't disclose anything about that at this moment in time, but
funny how
hopefully
yeah, Lexi is
that...
signing on to go to Neptune. He's going to be a producer on another planet.
Yeah,
he's helping NASA
so
with their live
Elon
streams.
been in my DMs, right? He was talking about Twitter, and then he just started talking about Mars and Venus and Neptune, and I'm like, buddy, I thought Neptune was underneath the sea, and now it's I'm very confused.
I would prefer Poseidon anyway. He's going to try and rename the planet. He's gonna, he's obviously, he's spending money wisely right now, and that includes on Lexi.
He really is. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening or watching. Follow each of our Twitters at MaskedSwan, at Initialise with a 1, and at Nymaera, and you can catch us again very, very soon. Johnny. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
No, nothing, Alex? All right.
No, I was, you know what? I was just then I'm like, damn it, do I have a sound effect? No, I don't. You get silence.